Next up, we have Cold Gold. Let's do it, Reggie.
Cold Gold.
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, hi. My name is Reggie. This is a new beatbox.
I kind of like this. Hey, this is moist. Okay.
All right.
How do we feel? I think I like that one, honestly.
I liked it. I love the Indian. I love that.
Yeah.
And the the kind of like the string sounds or whatever.
Your bounce almost reminded me. It was almost like it almost gave me like a Steely Dan kind of thing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But they took it and like where they put their kind of perk and stuff in between, it gave it a whole different bounce. I think that's why most people in the chat were like, "Oh, it's unique. Oh, it's whatever."
What's up, guys? This is Ben, aka Cold Gold. I know this breakdown is a bit late, almost a month since the battle went down. I've been moving. I've been trying to figure out OBS. We're here now, though, and that's what's important. We're going to get into the beat in a second. I want to just introduce myself a little bit first. I'm a kinesiologist, first and foremost. Music production is something that in the last 3 or 4 years I've been diving into, and I'm actually starting to kind of make some money doing that, as well as running my own business, kind of helping people with their posture, with chronic pain issues, teaching them how to run and move a lot better. And I'm going to talk at the end about just some tips for like physical and mental health that have been really useful for me. And I know like in the Kenny Beats Discord community, these issues, especially mental health, comes up a lot. And I think that you have to take the physical side into account as well. And that's some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. Just offer up some tips. But yeah, we're going to get to the beat. I've been doing these battles, like I said, for like a year. And just the idea of like finishing something in an hour and a half to a guy that would take 3 to 4 months easily on any project that I would even consider putting out was crazy at the start, but it's made me just so much faster, so much more efficient with what I'm doing. If the feeling's not there, scrap it, move on to the next one. So I'm really glad that I just kept going at it with the battles, even getting no votes, 2 votes, whatever. And got lucky on this day. So we're gonna get into the beat. Pretty simple. I don't want to take too much time on it. I started like 20 minutes before the beat battle began with just finding some sounds that I liked, and the first thing I came across that I kind of built everything around, including my sample chops, was this piano right here. Didn't do anything to it. Nothing. No EQ. Didn't even use any of the buses, which we'll talk about later. But just really nice chords. Chords are key, man. Sometimes you can get away without them, but a lot of times they help. This sound right here, this next one that I kind of found went really well with the piano. This one I think I took some low end out, and I also just threw some stock echo to widen it up. Also threw my chorus bus again for a little more width. Together, those two, every 4 bars kind of give this like almost A-B section. And just right away, I kind of knew I was onto something with that. From there, I knew I was kind of looking for interesting rhythmic parts, because obviously Reggie is a rhythmic mastermind, and I wanted to do something that might kind of catch his ear. And the couple sounds that I found, this one here brought that in near the end. The string sound that you hear in the intro, also very interesting, both melodically and rhythmically. Again, nothing done to that one, maybe some low end taken out of the first one. And then the kind of 16th notes, 32nd notes, I don't even know. Again, just melodically kind of hitting the same note or two, but rhythmically with everything went really well. So I had kind of these sounds lined up. I didn't have them structured like this when I started making the beat. I just kind of had the sounds, not even chopped, and then got the sample. Now the sample, I love the sample. I mean, having somebody beatboxing, especially Reggie Watts beatboxing, is useful. In the intro, you hear his voice.
Oh, hi. My name is Reggie.
Just chopped it up just so it kind of flowed within the intro a little bit.
Oh, hi. My name is Reggie. This is a new beatbox.
Very cute. Something I did in this intro part, or especially once the beat kind of started, is I just took the noise that you kind of hear at the end of this line here.
This is a new beatbox.
Just like the garage or wherever he was in, which just added a nice atmosphere. And I just looped it, essentially, just to give it that steady atmosphere and not have it kind of chop in and out, even though you'll definitely get lots of it with the multiple chops that I made. Just having a steady presence, I think, helped quite a bit. I think the first thing I did, and I went through a few different like tries, I guess. The first half hour of the hour and a bit that I had was just messing with the sample, trying to find the rhythm that I could hear in my head, and I had to play with the tempo a bunch. I think the tempo is 156 on this track, but I was just making drums out of his beatbox, and just making rhythms that were interesting to me. So at the start we had obviously not very much going on there, but with the instrumentation. So just a couple little clicks, really. We have probably the main chop right here that I would have done next. Then I added this kind of secondary just give it a little more bounce. Made a kick out of his vocal as well, which, you know, nothing too special about that. Use EQ, the multiband, and I think the decapitator on the effect rack from Sound Toys. Multiband compression is something I use quite a bit. I just have gotten really comfortable with it, and I can kind of use it as an EQ and a compressor together, just splitting things into the three bands, and manipulating the gain of those bands, being able to solo those bands, and then of course like compress them and affect the attack release, the dry, even the type of compression between peak and RMS. Yeah, I just usually can get the sound that I'm looking for using multiband. I'm sure there's other better multibands out there, but the stock one for me is just, again, I'm really comfortable with it. So all together, and then I made hats as well out of, and nothing crazy with the pattern there. All together, just the sample chops. Again, not crazy driving, but some kind of interesting rhythms there. And then I had that going with the instrumentation. So already some nice groove going on there. And then Splice came in clutch. Well, I think actually before I laid down those drums, I would have chosen the 808, which I used some like Roland pack, I want to say, of 808s, and just found one that I liked. Again, real simple pattern. As Reggie mentioned, as the chat mentioned, definitely a brown note right there. and it sounded good to me at the time. Still kind of sounds good to me. But if we bring this like a semitone down and listen to the last section here, and in context with everything else, I mean, that probably sounds better. But regardless, it was because the frequencies were so low, it's hard to tell. The brown note kind of hits, and there's probably a world where I could have gone back and forth between the two and just made that kind of interesting. But I think it's brown the whole way through. But whatever, got the job done. From there, have this little I don't know, called it a roll, whatever that is, just a nice little transitionary effect going into different parts of the track. And then, as you can see here, this is kind of the bulk of the drums. Again, splice came in clutch. 2 loops tied together, one more of a perk, one more of a full loop. We'll go through the full one first. Super groovy. You can see I have it running to a parallel compression drum bus. I'm going to take that off and we'll listen to the difference. Back on. Off. So you can hear it adds a little bit of just volume at the very least, and I don't think it's really not even compressing that much, just at the very top. Usually I would have that pumped a little bit more. But it gave me the desired effect here, and I think I have it running through the, the Devil Lock on Sound Toys. And then I had this perk loop. Affected the transients on it, on the transient thing. You guys probably can't see my cursor. I didn't really fully figure out OBS, but whatever. Ran that through just a drum room verb, and again, that parallel compression, those two together. Again, great groove, and then tied in with the sample chops. So pretty busy, but because the rest of the instrumentation was relatively simple, I think it worked out. Also added some claps in just to make the accents a little more punchy, without it really missing that downbeat. There we go. Again, run through the drum room and the parallel compression. You can see I've kind of messed with the delay meters on the far right side of the screen here. I really like just being able to use my arrow keys and just really having that precision with the amount of swing I have on certain tracks. I get like just clicking and dragging and moving things over. It just, for me, it feels faster to just do it that way, and then I can get more precise with it. So that was pretty much the whole beat. You would see my buses down here. Didn't use them a whole ton. They're just a part of my template. A couple ones that I wanted to point out. On the bass, I did use the bass verb bus, which is just a Ableton stock reverb and an EQ taking out most of the lows, so that you're just adding a little bit of high-end width to the bass, and just giving it a little bit more presence. Like using that one and morphing it to the kind of sound that I'm looking for. I've also got a mono bus here, which is just the utility with the mono button selected. If I have a element in the track that is panned quite hard or has some auto panning on, sometimes it can get lost in the mono mix, which is pretty similar to what most people would hear on their phone speakers. So I like to make sure that I have that presence, and I'll just use the mono bus to get a little bit of that. If again my track is panned and I want to kind of amp up the amount of mono signal that is coming through. Alright, so hopefully you got something out of that breakdown. Again, the real keys were the sounds that I had chosen. And this is maybe another tip for producers, is go through all your samples and just choose the ones that you like and just get rid of the FLAC. I just have a folder where I've kind of separated, you might be able to see it into claps, cymbals, dialogue, effects, drums, melodic loops, melodic one-shots. And that took a lot of time, but I was just, while I was watching TV or whatever, just like sorting through my samples. Oh, I like that. Drag it into the folder. Did that for a while, and when I went to make this beat, I just went through I believe the melodic loop folder and just picked out like most of the melodic sounds you hear in this beat, and it worked out for me. So yeah, organization, it's key. Okay, so health-wise, and this is where I think hopefully people get the most value out of this. There's a lot of really great, much better than me producers out there doing fantastic breakdowns. The information I have on kind of the health and movement side of things is what I think makes me kind of unique. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you now. So the first big tip, and I think this is a really important one, is to use some sort of blue light filter on your computer screen and on ideally your monitor as well if you have one. So most of the time my screen is set to something like this, whereas if I didn't have this on, it would be like this. Now in the middle of the day, I don't think this is completely necessary, although if I'm on my laptop or really any screen for a longer period of time, it's just so much easier on my eyes if I have it set kind of like this. This is taking a lot of the intense blue light from the screen, so you mostly see kind of the lights that you would get from like a sunset or a fire even. So this is important because our body is very in tune with light and is triggered by light to either think that, oh, it's time to be awake, it's time to be energized, or it's time to relax, it's time to chill, it's time to go to sleep. This light here, it represents midday. This is about the frequencies of light you would get during the middle of the day, and it's telling your brain, okay, it's time to be alert, definitely don't be sleeping. If you're looking at this anytime, even after 8 p.m., 9 p.m., maybe earlier if you're in the winter months, this is kind of messing with your circadian rhythm. This is messing with the timing systems of your body, of your sleep-wake cycles. If you have it like this, sure, there might still be some not so good effect just from being on a screen in general, but it's much more mitigated than looking at this. There's a free one called F.lux or F.lux. This is a slightly paid one, which I just like the layout, and it seems to work a little bit better across multiple screens for me. And it's relatively cheap, but F.lux is completely free. I'll put a link in the description of the video. Again, most of the time I'm about here with it, and it really doesn't affect me if I'm doing any kind of video editing or color editing. Yeah, I'll bring it back to here, and then once I'm done, bring it back here, and that can play a huge role in just getting better sleeps and not overwhelming your nervous system all the time, not stressing it. So the second tip revolves more around posture. A lot of people have a pretty distorted sense of what good posture is and what bad posture is, in my opinion, based off my experience. A lot of people think that bad posture is this slouch position, and they're partially right. If you're stuck like this and you're typing and whatever, like, yeah, that's not so good. But there's not too many people who really get completely stuck here. What happens is people are scared of getting stuck here, and what they do to compensate, because they've been told, stand up straight, shoulders back, chest up, is they kind of go too far in the opposite direction, right? Like, if they're really straining and pulling their chest down and they're holding this all the time, this is also a problem. This is something that I have to take clients out of very regularly and tell them to just allow the weight of their chest to relax. When you have this very military posture all the time, you end up over compressing the back, so you're kind of squishing all the back muscles together and opening up your front. And people would say an open front is good, and that's partially right, but it can be too open, and this can be a problem if you're not allowing it to rest into a more neutral position, right? You don't want to be here, you also don't really want to be here, and people think that this is good posture, when I would say the middle of those two is about right. In this position, I don't look like I'm slouching, like I've got this crazy hunchback. I just look relaxed. And when you're sitting, when you're producing especially, you don't want to be in a state of tension with your body. You want to be loose. And that's just going to translate to better sessions, better music. If you're thinking like, oh, I got to have good posture to impress the artist I'm working with or whatever, and you default to this kind of like overcompensating pattern, you're just going to burn yourself out. And you're just fighting gravity all the time, which, again, you don't want to be crushed by gravity, but you also don't want to push as hard as you possibly can against it. Part of good posture as well is breathing and how your rib cage opens and closes. Now, most people, they take a deep breath, especially when they overcompensate like we were talking about, and their front fills up and the front expands. Sometimes that doesn't happen and people need to work on that, but sometimes this happens too much, and instead they have their back muscles kind of get all tight. Now, what I want you to try, just as you're sitting here, is breathing so your front doesn't really expand, or expands a little bit, but you feel the back of your rib cage, especially around your like lower back, middle back. You breathe in and you get this sense of expanding front and back, and ideally expanding side to side, like a 360-degree opening. Now, when you try that, you might feel some like stretching sensations, like it's really tough to do and it's restricted. Generally, the air is going to want to go where it usually goes and not go to where you're tight. So you're going to do your best to just kind of keep it relaxed here, not tensing it, but prevent it from filling so you can fill up other areas. And that can be a big key to taking a bigger breath, to having just better overall mental health and mental clarity, staying more relaxed. And even if you do vocals, the idea of kind of singing and filling up the pressure in your back can make a big difference, as opposed to like trying to push out the front super hard all the time. All right, the last tip requires us to tuck our shirts in. Kenny, you're included if you're watching. So if you feel like your hips are tight, either at the front or either at the back, this is going to be really important to take note of. Your pelvis has the ability to tilt in this direction and tilt this way. You can just imagine you've got two knobs. The knobs either tilt your pelvis forward or they tilt your pelvis backwards. Those actions will require your abs to work. They'll require your back to work. They'll also require the muscles of your legs, both the backs of the legs and the fronts of the legs, to work and be connected to each other. Now, a lot of you probably can't touch your toes. I hope most of you can, but I'm going to guess there's definitely some of you that can't. And when you go to touch your toes, you end up trying to touch them in a very rounded back position. And that's not all bad, but if you're trying to get some length out of here, what's going to help you the most is learning how to roll the pelvis forward as you come down, so it feels like you're lifting your tailbone up towards the sky and you're pulling on your hamstrings as you come down. Now, when I do that, and I really emphasize moving out of my hips, I can't go as far. I can't get all the way to the ground, especially keeping a semi-active back. But if from this position I go and allow my spine to move, then I have all that range. But the key is learning how to move your pelvis, rolling it forward, lifting up the tailbone as you come down. So maybe this is really easy for you, and maybe your pelvis is maybe stuck like this. So when you come up, instead of your pelvis rolling backwards as you come up, your pelvis, like mine did for a long time, just kind of stays put. It's kind of a subtle difference. You can see how I'm very arched in my back here instead of allowing it to be a little more of a tucked under position. Now, if I'm going to try to stretch out the front of my hips, and instead of actually stretching the hips, all I'm doing is arching my back, I'm going to give myself back problems down the road. So it's also important, just in the same way we rolled the pelvis forward as we went into that hinge, we need to roll the pelvis backwards as we go into any kind of hip flexor stretch. As I try to open up the fronts of my hips, it's like I'm pulling up at the front and dropping my tailbone down as I move the hips forward. Seems like a small detail, but it can make a huge difference on how your abdominals work for you, how your ass works for you, the development of those muscles. And if you combine it with the breathing like we were doing, even a position like this feels like a nice stretch. And then if you go into like a single leg position, again, we're going to keep that tucked under a little bit as you go forward. Or if I'm going to stretch out the back of this leg, I roll the pelvis forward with one leg in front of the other. That feels like a really nice opening and connects me really well. If any of you guys are looking for somebody to help you with any chronic pains that you have, or just looking to train harder, but you just keep running into roadblocks with your shoulder as you're benching or whatever, I specialize in getting around those problems and showing you how you can train in a way that both gives you the desired look that you're going for, but also makes your body just work better, connects it overall, and just puts you in a better headspace. It's generally more complicated than your standard gym rat exercises, but it's a lot more rewarding at the same time. So hopefully that was entertaining, informative, and not too long. If anyone's looking to have me help them as a producer or as a kinesiologist, as somebody to help them with their physical and mental health as well, I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, but I do online training, online collaborating with music as well. Just contact me. I'll leave all my info in the description, and let me know if there's any way I can help.